Hopefully, everyone has watched Captain America: Brave New World. Honestly, I expected this to be one of the worst movies in Marvel history due to all the reshoots, but I was wrong. It turned out to be a good movie, but not a good Captain America movie. Confused? Let me explain. The biggest problem with Brave New World isn't the story, it's the fact that it never truly feels like a Captain America movie. It tries to tell us that Sam Wilson is the new Cap, but it never really shows us why we should believe it. Think about Civil War. That movie was about Bucky being controlled and framed to tear the Avengers apart. Brave New World follows the same exact idea, only this time, it's Sam's friend who gets manipulated by the leader to ruin Thunderbolt Ross's reputation. Sam spends most of the movie trying to help him, which makes sense for his character, but the problem is, even though the movie calls him Captain America, it still treats him like Falcon. He's not leading, he's reacting. He's not commanding respect, he's trying to prove himself. It never feels like his movie. That's the biggest flaw. Sam didn't earn the title of Captain America. It was just handed to him at the end of Endgame, and Marvel expected everyone to just go along with it. But a title like that isn't something you can just give someone, it has to be proven. Steve Rogers went through multiple defining moments that shaped him into Captain America. He had to fight against his own government. He had to defy orders. He had to prove, over and over again, that he was Captain America before anyone called him that. Sam never got that moment. He was Steve's right-hand man. Sure, but that's not the same as leading. Look at how Marvel handled Yelena Belova. When Natasha Romanoff died, they didn't immediately push Yelena as the new Black Widow. They let her grow into her own character. Fans accepted her because there was no pressure to replace Natasha. Yelena just became Yelena. That's what Sam needed. He should have had his own movie as Falcon, proving himself in his own way. But instead, Marvel slapped the Captain America name on this film, setting expectations way too high. And that's why it doesn't work. It's not that people don't like Sam Wilson, it's that they don't buy him as Captain America yet. Not because he's not worthy, but because the movie never gives us a real reason to believe it. Another major issue with Brave New World is the false promotion. First, Marvel misused the Captain America name, and then they baited audiences with Red Hulk. Every piece of marketing heavily featured Hulk, making it seem like he was a major part of the film. But in reality, Red Hulk barely gets 5 minutes of screen time. If you remove those 5 minutes, the movie doesn't change at all. It becomes clear that Marvel used Hulk as a marketing gimmick to get people excited, even though he has no real impact on the story. In fact, Brave New World doesn't feel like a Captain America movie at all, it feels more like a Red Hulk origin story. If you look closely, every major character is centered around Thunderbolt Ross. The leader isn't even a villain for Sam Wilson, he's a villain for Ross. The entire plot revolves around Ross's transformation into Red Hulk, not Sam's journey as Captain America. The film should have been titled Red Hulk because that's the real story being told. And once again, Sam Wilson gets pushed into the background of his own movie. It feels like Anthony Mackie forgot that he's Falcon. He thinks he's Steve Rogers. When you look at his character in The Winter Soldier and Civil War, Sam Wilson always had a natural charm. He had a fun, easygoing personality that made him stand out. His humor, his attitude, those were things that made people enjoy his presence on screen. But in Brave New World, that personality is completely gone. Instead of bringing his own identity to Captain America, Mackie just tries to mimic Steve Rogers. He constantly gives the same serious expressions that Chris Evans did in his movies, but it doesn't feel natural for him. It feels forced. The unique energy that made Sam Wilson special is missing. And to make things worse, his own sidekick ends up taking on the Falcon role, the role that Sam Wilson was originally great at. Instead of Sam leading in a way that fits him, he's been boxed into a version of Captain America that doesn't suit him. It's like Marvel is trying to mold him into something he's not, rather than letting him evolve in his own way, and that's why it doesn't feel right. And then there's Giancarlo Esposito. Why is he even in this movie? I have no idea. He shows up for barely 5 minutes, and his character has no real purpose in the story. There's no depth, no proper writing, he just appears, fights Sam Wilson, and that's it. The worst part, the action sequence doesn't even suit him. You can clearly see him struggling to pull off the role because of his age. It just doesn't look convincing. And don't get me wrong, I know he's a phenomenal actor. He's one of the best in the industry, but this movie didn't need him. His talent was completely wasted here. It feels like Marvel just threw him in for the sake of having a big name, rather than giving him an actual meaningful role. Do you think he deserved this role? There are so many wasted characters in this movie. They just show up, have a moment, and disappear without leaving any impact. It feels like they were thrown in just for the sake of it. Take Seth Rollins, for example. He was supposed to be in the movie, and he even talked about it before the release. But unfortunately, his scenes got cut. He was disappointed, but honestly, I think he got lucky. He dodged a bullet because, just like Giancarlo Esposito, he deserved a better role. If he had been included, he probably would have been another forgettable side character with no real purpose. And then there's the political agenda. It's definitely there, though at this point, it's expected in Marvel movies. But I will say one thing, at least there's no forced gender swapping or race swapping in this film. That's something I genuinely appreciate. We've seen how bad the backlash has been, especially with the recent Spider-Man animated series. Marvel didn't make that mistake here, which is a rare positive in a film filled with questionable choices. I love a good hand-to-hand fight sequence, and this movie delivers some solid action. It's not on the level of Steve Rogers vs. Bucky in The Winter Soldier, but it's decent. The choreography feels intense at times, but there are moments where it could have been more refined. Now, let's talk about the final battle. Honestly, it doesn't even feel like a real battle. It lacks that grand, high-stakes feeling that a Captain America climax should have. And Red Hulk, his CGI is all over the place. Sometimes he looks amazing, but in other scenes, the effects are surprisingly bad at times. He even looks smaller than he should be. It's frustrating because Marvel has the budget, but inconsistency like this takes you out of the experience. Then there's the classic Marvel trope villains suddenly turning good after just one conversation with the hero. It happens again here. Sam Wilson talks to Red Hulk, and just like that, he calms down. The same thing happens with Giancarlo Esposito's character. Marvel keeps using this formula, and it's getting old. A great villain needs more depth than just talked out of being bad. This movie feels like it has no real purpose. Before its release, many fans speculated that it would explore adamantium, building toward future MCU storylines, but in reality, there's barely anything about it. Sure, Ross briefly mentions wanting to share adamantium, but that's it. Nothing in the plot actually moves in that direction. I already said it before, but this isn't really a Captain America movie. If you look at it from a different angle, it works much better as a Red Hulk origin story. The whole film revolves around Thunderbolt Ross's transformation, his conflicts, and how he fits into the bigger picture. If Marvel had just marketed it that way, it might have made more sense. Instead, they slapped the Captain America name on it, and now it feels like a bait-and switch. Every time Sam Wilson opens his mouth to talk to his sidekick, he starts giving some forced speech like he's trying way too hard to be Captain America. But that's not what we want. We want Sam Wilson. The charm, the humor, the personality that made him work so well in the previous movies. That's what made him likable in Winter Soldier and Civil War. Then there's the unnecessary cameos. Why did Bucky need to show up just to give Sam another pep talk? It feels forced, just like how Marvel shoved Daredevil into She-Hulk for no reason. These random cameos don't add anything meaningful. They just exist for cheap nostalgia. The biggest issue is that Sam himself keeps trying to be Steve Rogers, but he doesn't need to be another Steve. He needs to be his own Captain America. If even his character is constantly comparing himself to Steve, how can Marvel expect the audience to stop doing the same? The solution isn't in cameos or forced speeches, it's in strong character writing. This movie is actually pretty decent, especially when you compare it to the Marvels. I'd say it's better than that, but still falls short of Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. At least Quantumania had some fun moments. Even if it wasn't great overall, if Marvel had just promoted this as a Falcon movie instead of a Captain America movie, I think a lot of people would have enjoyed it way more.